A psalm by the sons of Korah emphasizes this place of shelter, even in the darkest times.
God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore we will not fear, even though the earth be removed.
That's the Hebrew mur, changed.
And though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though its waters roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with its swelling. Selah. Psalm 46, 1-3.
When the big one hits, this psalm should be on the lips of every believer as he or she contemplates the events of this momentous day. The psalmist speaks of shaking and swelling, which is precisely what volcanoes do before they erupt. A provocative question remains: will the Antichrist's temple be destroyed in this whopper quake? It's quite possible, even likely. The fault line through the Mount of Olives runs just south of the Temple Mount, through the Valley of Hinnom. So whether the temple, or even the mount, still stands depends on how much of Malachi's prophecy has already been fulfilled.
Behold, I send my messenger, and he will prepare the way before me. And Yahweh, whom you seek, will suddenly come to his temple, even the messenger of the covenant, in whom you delight. Behold, he is coming, says Yahweh Almighty. But who can endure the day of his coming? And who can stand when he appears? For he is like a refiner's fire, and like launderer's soap. Malachi 3, 1-2.
My messenger was John the Baptist, but the role will also be fulfilled by the future Elijah. Yahshua, who, as we have seen, is Yahweh, is described here as the messenger of the covenant. He already came to his temple 2,000 years ago, but according to Ezekiel, he will build a new temple and enter it via the eastern gate. There is no scriptural reason the temple has to be standing the moment the king returns. The persistent Jewish myth that the building of the temple will precipitate the Messiah's coming is groundless and silly. Is this temple, mentioned by Malachi, Herod's temple, the tribulation edifice, or the new one Yahshua will build in Jerusalem? Or could it be his physical body? The Haggai passage quoted above goes on to say,
And they shall come down to the desire of all nations.
That's Messiah.
And I will fill this temple with glory, says Almighty Yahweh. Haggai 2:7.
Yahweh has most definitely filled the temple of Yahshua's body with glory. That being said, though, it's clear that a new temple will be built, one the Antichrist's grubby hands have never touched. If I had to guess, and I do since we aren't told, I'd say the Antichrist's tribulation temple will crumble into expensive dust during this earthquake, along with everything else that might still be standing on the Temple Mount. As John said, the great Babylon will be remembered. It seems to me that God has no use for our pretensions. He's only interested in our love. We shall, in a later chapter, take a close look at the millennial temple as specified in Ezekiel's prophecy. It looks nothing like any temple that has ever been built on Mount Moriah. For what it's worth, there's one more factor worth mentioning. The Mount of Olives today is intact. It does not have a big valley running east to west through the middle of it, nor has there ever been a multiple epicenter quake in recorded history in which entire cities all over the earth crumbled and islands and mountains disappeared. This is another nail in the coffin of the preterist argument that says all these prophecies have been fulfilled in the past. It just isn't so. Let's return to Zechariah. We weren't quite done there.
Then you shall flee through my mountain valley, for the mountain valley shall reach to Azel. Yes, you shall flee, as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah and all the saints with you. Zechariah 14:5.
The context, you'll recall, is Yahweh's fight against the nations. The earthquake has formed a trough, a mountain valley, where the summit of the Mount of Olives used to be. And the Jews are seen using this valley as an escape route. The question is, what are they fleeing from? The earthquake or the Antichrist. There are admittedly a lot of things going on at once here. We're focused now on a single autumn day, October 3rd, 2033, if my one day is literally 1,000 years view is correct. Those Jews who have so recently returned to Jerusalem after 3.5 years of God's protection in the wilderness suddenly find themselves facing an old nemesis with a new army. The Antichrist has assembled his forces and is preparing to move in for the kill. The two witnesses, whom the returning Jews counted as allies, albeit in the same way a cancer patient sees chemotherapy, were killed 3.5 days ago. But today, before their very eyes, their corpses have been revived, and more amazing still, they've ascended to heaven in a cloud, having been commanded by an audible, thunderous voice to come up. Then, not more than an hour later, this earthquake to end all earthquakes has taken place, caused not by normal tectonic forces, but apparently by the very feet of God stepping on to the Mount of Olives. It will be lost on none of these pious Jews what day this is. It is the 10th day of the month of Tishri, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement. The nation of Israel will at last understand everything Yahshua of Nazareth said was true. Everything he did was done out of love for them, and they will be afflicted in their souls.
They will look on Yahweh whom they pierced. Yes, they will mourn for him as one mourns for his only son, and grieve for him as one grieves for a firstborn. Zechariah 12:10.
Those who have discovered the book of Acts will realize that the prophecy concerning the matter of his return had been fulfilled to the letter.
This same Jesus, who was taken up from you into heaven, will so come in like manner as you saw him go into heaven. Acts 1:10.
The very next verse explains where they were when this happened, where Yahshua would come again, the Mount of Olives. By this time, the Jews will have come to the realization that one more time they must dodge the Antichrist, but the despair will have dissipated. They'll know that this time all they have to do is get behind their Messiah. Literally, they won't have far to go. As Zach said,
Then you shall flee through my mountain valley, for the mountain valley shall reach to Azal.
Just to the east of Olivet is a little village called Beth Ha-Etzal. It was mentioned in Micah 1:11 as Beth Azel. If this is the Azal of which Zechariah spoke, the Israelis in the old city won't have to flee more than a mile or two to reach the shelter of Christ's protection. In truth, though Zechariah reports their flight, and you can't blame them for being nervous, they really didn't have to move at all. Isaiah puts the moment into perspective.
The glory of Yahweh shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together, for the mouth of Yahweh has spoken.
All flesh shall see it means that the news cameras are still rolling. Read it and weep, world.
O Zion, you who bring good tidings, get up into the high mountain. O Jerusalem, you who bring good tidings, lift up your voice with strength. Lift it up, be not afraid. Say to the cities of Judah, Behold your God. Behold, Yahweh shall come with a strong hand, and his arm shall rule for him. Behold, his reward is with him, and his work before him. He will feed his flock like a shepherd. He will gather the lambs with his arm, and carry them in his bosom, and gently lead those who are with young. Isaiah 40:5 and 9 through 11.
Jews in Jerusalem will see it first and spread the news to those who have not yet returned. Messiah has come. He will come as a tender shepherd to meet the needs of his own flock, but also with a strong arm to fight against those who would harm them. Notice his short-term goal.
His reward is with him, and his work before him.
We'll discuss the rewards a bit later. They're high on his priority list. But first, there's some last-minute business to attend to. His work cut out for him. Every farmer knows that timing is important when it comes to harvesting crops. You don't bring in your corn before the ears have formed and been given a chance to ripen into something good. Neither do you leave your crop standing in the field until it rots. Rather, the wise farmer gathers his crop as it nears its peak of perfection, when it's about as good as it's going to get. In the same way, God will harvest the earth. He's going to give his corn every opportunity to develop fine, full ears. Some will mature early and some late. Some, he notes with chagrin, will turn out in the end to be weeds, good for nothing. Yahweh knows that he can't let the weeds grow in his field forever, for they will eventually choke out whatever good grain still remains, making the whole field unproductive. Everything will get sorted out at the time of the harvest. That's the picture, more or less, that John was shown, an overview of the end of the earth growing season.
Then I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and on the cloud sat one like the Son of Man, having on his hand a sharp sickle.
This is Yahshua returning in glory. His crown, which is in Greek a Stephanos, a victor's wreath, is made of gold, not a perishable laurel bough like the Olympic champions would have received. He has not only won, his victory is permanent and incorruptible.
And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him who sat on the cloud, "Thrust in your sickle and reap, for the time has come for you to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe." So he who sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped.
The angel isn't telling God what to do. He's merely announcing the plan so that John might understand what's going on. Note that it's King Yahshua who's wielding the sickle. The authority is his. The angels, however, are tasked for the harvest as well.
Then another angel came out of the temple which was in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. And another angel came out from the altar, who had power over fire. And he cried with a loud cry to him who had the sharp sickle, saying, "Thrust in your sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe." So the angel thrust in his sickle into the earth, and gathered the vine of the earth, and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God.
Though we see the angel swinging a sickle of preparation here, it's clear that the administration of wrath remains God's prerogative alone.
And the winepress was trampled outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the horses' bridles, for 1,600 furlongs. Revelation 14:14-20.
I admit it. I'm having trouble comprehending the extent of the carnage here. My feeble brain can't seem to count that high. This is worse than any single engagement we've seen so far, and we've seen a lot. The Battle of Magog looks like a skirmish in comparison. Note first that the battle is fought outside of the city, that is, Jerusalem. That's where the Jews are holed up, surrounded by the Antichrist's army to end all armies, like Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Jerusalem is also where Yahshua has made his earth-shattering entrance, so naturally Satan thinks he's got him surrounded too. The Antichrist's vast army has by this time, a day or two from the end, deployed over the whole country. 1,600 furlongs, that's the Roman stadia, is about 180 miles, pretty much the entire length of Israel. John calmly infers that their mangled corpses will pave the nation from one end to the other, squashed like grapes in a winepress, their blood splashing up to 3 or 4 feet off the ground, the height of a horse's bridle. I realize this is awfully squishy stuff. If you don't like the sight of blood, especially your own, I suggest you don't go there.